The Stage Door Show, celebrating the independent artist. With your host, Dave Hondel.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Stage Door Show tonight. This is Dave Hondel. I have a great show for you lined up. I have a couple friends of mine from Hollywood, California, Sonny Dyon and Sonny Jr., a father-son duo that are making some great movies with some very, very big names. So I sat down with them recently, and here's that interview. Enjoy.
So excited to see you, Dave. You look great. New York treats you very well.
You too. LA's treating you guys well, of course. But Sonny, you know, you're an multi-award winning writer, director, producer, and Sonny Jr., you are a filmmaker, obviously.
Get it clear.
So, but I just wanted to kind of talk about, you know, you used to be in Florida, and obviously that's where we know each other from, and we were in the Orlando area. But, you know, 4 years ago, you moved out to LA to pursue that dream, and you know, you've done really well for yourself. To talk about that move from Orlando to LA and really how that went, number one, and I'm sure it wasn't as smooth as some people think it might be, but talk about that transition from one coast to the other and how that changed, you know, your career.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that there's a whole big fish, small pond, you know, concept. Not that I was a big fish even in Orlando, because Orlando has a pretty thriving art community. Yeah. You know, and I was a filmmaker in Orlando. We made, you know, a couple of short films there. I've been ramping up. I'm pacing myself. There's the line in Shaun of the Dead where he's like, I still things I want to do with my life. And he says, when? Like, I still have bigger things I want to do.
It's never too late.
No, that's exactly right. There's no expiration date on a dream. That's what I always say. So, but we knew, you know, I wanted to be an actor involved in arts my entire life. My kids vicariously, you know, through that also, without me pushing it really, they just developed their own love, you know, Sonny particularly for film and filmmaking, and Alex for acting. You know, and our kids acted together, which is really funny for those of you who obviously don't know Dave or Dave's kids maybe. Our children all acted. I directed both of your kids.
That's
you know
right,
what I mean?
you did.
So, like,
absolutely.
They're amazing, brilliantly talented people. But you know, and I was proud to work with both of them. And Sonny and Alex have both shared the stage. I mean, our Jessica and Alex did a duet together. I remember at like state finals or whatever in Florida at one point. They were incredible. But anyway, yeah, so it was fait accompli that I was going to eventually move here. Like, there was never a question about it. We lived here in 2000. I got out of the Air Force and we moved from Vegas, and LA ate me up and spit me out. The kids were little. We weren't making any money. And it is a struggle to live here. LA is undefeated. You know, I mean, that's what I always tell everybody. I'm like, the best you can do is hold your own. Like, no one, like, if you have 1 month where you're like, I'm not stressed out about rent, that's a W. Yeah. No one walks out of LA like, I kicked LA's ass. Everybody's like, I made it. I did it. Okay. You know, and so when we were in 2000, you know, young, the boys were little and in school, and I just gotten out of the Air Force. We weren't making any money. And I did some improv stuff with John Mangum and Wayne Brady and a dear friend of mine, Tim Cudworth, and made some really good connections then. But there's this whole thing. Oh, it's money. That's what it's called. Money was not
very
there.
important.
Yeah, and improv does not pay very well.
No,
no.
And it still doesn't either. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so we got to a point where I was just like, weren't going to make it, and I had an offer to do my day job in Chicago, and the money stretched a little bit further, and all my family lives in, you know, we're from Chicago. So we moved, but I plotted and waited. We were eventually coming back to LA. Now my son, Alex, like laid all the groundwork. He moved here when he was 18 years old, just like Jessica moved out, you know, like New York by you.
Yep.
He was 18 years old, and he was like, I'm going out here by myself and I'm going to do my thing. And he's done great, you know, out here since he's been here. He'd probably say he hasn't, but he really has. He's been, you know, this close on a billion things. You know, he's been right there.
Didn't he do a candy commercial? Was it Skittles or?
In Orlando.
Yeah, that was back in Florida. He did the Airheads.
Airheads. That's right. Airheads. That's right. I remember watching that. I think he dove into a pool of Airheads.
Yeah. But he moved out here and he got into Groundlings, and he did 2 years at Groundlings, and then he got into Ivana Chubbuck, who's like probably the world's greatest living acting teacher.
Yeah.
And he was in Ivana Chubbuck's masterclass, and he did all the work, and he did a ton of auditions and everything. And we were eventually going to move, and we just kept weighing it. So, we were young when we got married, my wife and I, and obviously not me and Sonny. And like he moved out.
We didn't get married till much.
Well, it's LA. You never know. So,
Yeah. These liberals. But Sonny moved out when he was 18. He went to Columbia College in Chicago, which is this funny kind of symmetry. I was supposed to go to Columbia College in Chicago. I grew up in Upper Michigan and was supposed to go to Columbia College. I lived by myself since my sophomore year of high school, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing filling out financial aid paperwork, and I didn't fill it out right. But I didn't know that, and nobody could tell me that I was a dummy, so I didn't know, and I got accepted at Columbia. And then when I went to enroll, they were like, yeah, do you have your check or whatever for enrollment? And I'm like, no, it's all free. I'm poor. I get free college. Look, I'm really look, and I'm very poor. I'm like, and I'm smart, but I'm very poor. And they were like, you are poor, and so poor that you can't go here. And so I was like, I'm going to take a semester off, and that's been 27 years. And it just never, my wife and I got married shortly after that. We had him, and then right after that, we had his brother, and whatever. But it was always the longest.
No, that's great. Sonny, Sonny Jr., I just wanted to talk to you about your schoolings. I know after you went to school for being a filmmaker, but how did schooling kind of prepare you for this? Or was this something that you kind of already had in you that you really didn't need schooling for? Talk about the schooling and how that really helped you, or did that kind of help push you along?
It's a really interesting question. I love this. Well, I think there's a lot of friendly competition within the family. And I think for a while, I had been kind of denying my own nature a little bit. Like I was always a big film guy. And I remember being, 14, 15, 16, kind of going up into the closet and digging through, dad's DVDs. And it's like watching Citizen Kane for the first time, going through Friedkin, like that kind of stuff. And for whatever reason, because remember when I first enrolled in Columbia, I was going to study music. And I don't fucking know anything about music. I wasn't good then. And
he was self-taught.
Okay.
He's selling himself short. But
I was like, I'm gonna be a musician, and I'm gonna
next Philip Glass.
I'm gonna be Philip Glass. I remember I had read something about Kanye West and Kid Cudi or someone like that. Yeah. They were producing an album, and the way to get into the headspace was they had all these classic science fiction films on the wall in the studio. And I was like, that's a great idea. When I'm going to make my music, I'm going to put these movies on to get myself excited. So I was like, get Reason up on the computer, my little plug-in synthesizer, and I'd put on 2001: A Space Odyssey. And fuck if, 30 minutes go by and I just close the computer. I'm just like, this is it. I'm like 16 years old.
So that was the beginning and the end of your music career.
Exactly right.
Beginning and the end.
Well, every filmmaker is probably a failed musician.
Maybe.
Any filmmaker that
was a
played
rapper.
the trombone.
I wanted to rap.
Right. And I think that was, you get to a point where you're like, well, I can just put music in movies, so why do I have to make music? But it was interesting because I applied to Columbia and I wanted to be a musician, and then I kind of stopped with the fake, I want to be a musician. I was like, no, of course I want to be a filmmaker. Of course. And originally I just wanted to be a director. And so I applied, I got in the directing program. I went to school just to learn about directing, whatever that's supposed to mean. And of course, first semester, I'm like, well, I don't want to direct this script or that script or that script. So I started writing. And then now, until recently, I feel like the biggest way I've defined myself has been a writer. It's been a complete 180,
Well, a caveat to this story, though, is when he and Alex were little, the Sims video games?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They would create stories with their Sims characters and then do like a screen record of the video game playing. So they had this thing called like The Swing or something.
This is embarrassing.
And no, it wasn't though, but it was like this creepy little horror story that they were like 9 and 10 years old, that they did these creepy girl voices and all this shit. And then they played
Mama's in them.
Yeah. My wife's in it. They did like Dust in the Wind underneath like the song by Kansas. And they were 9 and 10 years old. And I was like, Daddy's a director, right? That's what I want to do. You know, and
right.
Yeah, all that. We don't really care what you want to do.
It's not about you, Dad.
Yeah, exactly. Very true.
The Swing is a great film.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Great
I always look at my first one too, and I have to shut it off right away. But you have to start somewhere, and you have to have like a measuring stick from there to here. So I always look at my first one, going, "Oh man, I came a long way."
We'll slap it on like the DVD commentary someday.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you guys like working together? I mean, obviously you're dad and father and son, but how was that dynamic when you're on the set? Because I know if you're directing, regardless of who's in it, in fact, Jessica sometimes can't be with me when I direct because I treat her as like anybody else. But there's no favoritism. But how does it go when you guys, the dynamic working together on a set?
Well, it was really interesting because the dynamic on set was kind of no problems at all. And I think the reason that is we've been working on this movie together for 3 years almost.
Yeah.
So it's like a lot of the headbutting we just got taken care of before, and by the time we arrive on set, like our visions are just in complete lockstep. So I mean, there's a funny story about this. There's one piece of direction, my finest in my career so far, maybe. And it's like we're sitting in the car, and it's getting a little big.
Well, let me just let me pull it back and then get back. Yeah. So we co-directed this piece, but I also starred in it. Okay, so one of the issues was that you need to have one voice on set. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you know how that works. If there's 5 people in direction, you're like, who the fuck am I listening to?
Yeah.
So, despite my gigantic ego, I was like, hey, it's better if you're the only voice on set. And he and I were in such lockstep where we agreed on the same things. And I trusted him so implicitly and knew that whatever he was going to say is something we had already talked about a million times. Or if he comes up with something that we hadn't thought about, I trust him that it's going to be great because I know what a good filmmaker he is.
Right.
And we had internalized the material for literally where it was boring to us.
Right.
Almost. It was like, man, we just knew it back to front.
So in the beginning of it, there was like a couple of, so our cinematographer for this, our DP for this is this guy named Jon Heder. Mm-hmm. Jon Heder legitimately has more credits than anybody in the history of Hollywood. He shot Jaws. He shot Boogie Nights. He shot he was like Steadicam.
He's a big time Steadicam op.
Yeah,
he's doing additional photography and stuff like that. But he's a genius.
Yeah, he's one of the best Steadicam operators and moving camera operators in the history of Hollywood, if not the most famous.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so he's got something like 900 IMDb credits. Interestingly enough, the most credited actor from IMDb is Eric Roberts, who was also in this with us, which is so we have these two
the stars aligned.
Yeah, right. So anyway, so while we're doing this, we know we have this great cinematographer or whatever, but Sonny and I are very locked in what we want to do. Yeah. So when the idea is when our DP, who you want to trust because obviously he's got all this experience, when he was like, his thoughts were disparate for what we were doing, I would just kind of go like, are you okay with that? Like, because I heard that, but I didn't want to overstep because at this point I'm supposed to be concentrating on being an actor. Right. And so in the beginning of the process, we had Eric Roberts on the first day. Yeah. So we only shot for 3 days or 4 days really. Yeah. So we had Eric for the first day and it was pretty much just Eric and I and Alex. Alex came in later.
Yeah, that's right.
And so
Alex is Sonny Jr.'s brother and Sonny's son, other son. So.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so Alex has a part in this as well. And so it was just the 3 of us in that first day. But while we were shooting, in the beginning of it, I was very much like, oh, do I got to say something? Should I step in here? But then watching, because we had never worked in that aspect of it. We'd never co-directed anything.
Yeah.
So in that aspect, I was like, after a while, I was like, I don't have to say shit because he's already got it. He's already thinking of it. Right. So then we're in the car and we're acting, and now,
oh my God. So this is, I think this is just a testament to how closely we had figured out the material between us. We do a take of this scene. The scene is good. It's fine. It's a little big. And all I have to say, I just walk around, cameras resetting up, they're adjusting the lighting, blah, blah, blah. And I lean up to the driver's seat and I go, Dad, let's do one more, just a little less Sonny Dyon. A little less Sonny Dyon. And walk away. And the next take's fucking perfect.
But I knew
all it took.
talking a little bit, whatever else. But I knew right before that actually happened that he was fine. So Eric Roberts, who's a consummate professional, he really is great. And on camera, once he's on camera, dude, he's money. He gave us so much that we were just like, I hadn't even thought of reading it that way.
My name's Preston Forchana, and I'm a private dick. I know, right? We still exist. I mean, who knew? But it is getting harder and harder. Fortunately, I learned from the best, my old man. My pops taught me 3 simple rules to survive in this game. Rule number 1, smile.
It's a classic de-escalation tool. If you're smiling, it looks like everything is going to be just fine.
Rule number 2, write shit down.
Write shit down. No matter how old you are, the memory isn't perfect. Plus, when you write shit down, it looks like it matters, and people take you seriously.
Exactly. And rule number 3,
don't fuck Nancy.
Who's Nancy?
You know who Nancy is.
Everyone knows who Nancy is. Other than that, I kick it old school. I wear a suit. I read the papers.
You drink on the job.
I drink on the... All right, let's not start with that. I told you, I drink to stay sharp.
Well, Razor's Edge, you might want to take another pull. Your ladies' friend been in there a few minutes, and my guess is they're not having a book club.
You're right. Time to do some work. Need my tools, my camera, my notepad, and of course, my piece.
Are you really going to take that piece? It's a love shack, not an armed encampment.
All right.
Atta boy. Go get him, kid.
Thanks, Pop. I was thinking... sometimes I forget that you're dead.
Yeah.
But he is definitely someone who likes to screw around and play a little bit.
Yeah.
And on a big set, when you have tons of money, it's a lot easier to do that. On a small indie film with no permits, shooting in the middle of Hollywood, we don't really have a lot of time for that. So he kept, when Sonny was trying to do clapboard, he's trying to slate. Eric kept grabbing the slate. Just to be funny. He wasn't being a dick. He was just being funny. But he kept doing it. And we're like, there's cars coming by and stuff, and it's like we're kind of up against the gun. We really need to get out of this car and move to the environment.
The money we've put into this is all donezo, all down the drain if one cop drives by.
Yeah.
So like every second, we're all, me and you are trying to be cool. Just pouring
you gotta have
sweat.
a watch. You gotta have a watch out.
And we're 2 blocks away from the Wilcox police station in Hollywood. Like I literally live in the heart of Hollywood. I'm half a mile from Hollywood and Highland where the Oscars are. Like we literally live. I live a block off of Sunset. So we're So we're
in the mix.
And Eric keeps pulling the slate. And finally, Sonny's been really cool about it. Finally, Sonny goes, Eric, stop fucking around and stop grabbing the slate. He's like, sorry, boss. He had yelled at me in front of the crew, but he was just being very funny about it.
Yeah, that's cool.
It was great to see this guy who's been directed by Paul Thomas Anderson and Bob and Christopher Nolan and just the icons of our industry. And this is my kid, you know what I mean? And he's toe to toe with this guy. Was for me as a dad and also as a collaborator, professionally with him. But just as his father, I was like, that's my kid.
That's my kid. But, speaking of Eric Roberts, you've worked. Sonny, you worked with Mark Hamill, and you worked with Jon Heder and Kevin Conroy, all kinds of stars and star power in Relatively Super, your animated short. So I want to talk about that a little bit because I think that for our indie filmmakers out there that are just getting started, I mean, when they hear those names, they're thinking, how in the hell does he get those names on an indie film like that? So talk about that process and talk about working with those stars, because I've seen some of your footage behind the scenes, which we're going to show here in a minute. But they were as professional as anybody would be on a major set with a major studio, right? So talk about that process. How did you get them, and then talk about working with them.
So this is got to be 15 years ago or something. We still lived in Chicago, so it's like 15 years ago, and it was like Christmas break or
I think it was Pulaski Day. The classic Chicago holiday, Pulaski Day.
Casimir
Pulaski Day.
So
You get a day off. The best.
So the boys were off school.
Shout out to the Prussian luminary, Casimir Pulaski.
So the boys were off school, and I worked from home already at the time. I owned a small AV company, and I took the kids to like it was like Olive Garden or
I know this. It was Applebee's.
It was Applebee's
Because they had the 2-for-1. The 2-for-1.
So maybe I was drinking at lunch. I recall. Sure. So maybe I'm double fisting gin and tonics.
Maybe it was all good. We'll just
Yeah. Either way, but we went there and they had the TVs on because it's the middle of the day, and so instead of like music or whatever playing, we were sitting near the bar, just because that was where seating was, not because of double. Anyway, so we were sitting there near the bar, and they had this thing where they had discovered an ossuary in Jerusalem.
What is an ossuary?
It's a bone box, like a coffin box. So and the carved in the front of this ossuary was, "Here lies James, son of Joseph, brother to Jesus." The implication that this is Jimmy Christ. This is like Jesus' brother James, right? And they really believed this. They found out later that the brother to Jesus was added like 300 years after the son of James stuff. So that it's probably just some random Jerusalem dude, but it's not actually Jimmy Christ.
Yeah.
So we were sitting there.
Christ is probably a common given name.
Yeah.
Right.
Brian Christ, Ricky, Billy Joe.
Jimmy.
So we're not very religious, but like Sonny leans into me, and I'm like, wow, this is incredible. And I was raised Catholic.
Yeah.
And he leans into me, and he's like, "Dad, Jesus is real?" And I was like, "Well, historically, for sure." You know what I mean? I'm like, "Yeah, he's historically a real person, absolutely." And he or Alex were like, "God, it would be so great being Jesus's brother." And as a good father, I should have been like, "It sure would," but I was like, "Really? That would have sucked." And they're like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, you're at your birthday party and you're doing the the thumb trick.
Well, Jesus is walking on water. You're sitting on the beach.
As I said, I'm like, you're doing the thumb trick for the cute little Palestinian girl, and she's like, "Your brother just walked across the pool." And then the boys were like, "Yeah," and you're like, "Oh, do you want one of my fruit roll-ups?" And they're like, your brother has fruit by the yard, And he said, and we're like just cracking up.
Yeah.
And one of the boys were like, "Dad, you should write that as your next movie." And I was like, the thing is, religion is a very sacred thing, and some people have no sense of humor about it. Even if you're not malignant about it, and I would not ever. It's not my nature.
Right.
Dark to be dark. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get
Even
that.
though there's a lot of humor in that, I'm just like, I just don't want to fight with people that are offended by it.
Right. Yeah.
But I was like, but the concept of sibling rivalry is ubiquitous.
Right.
And so I think we had a conversation about like, what if you were Ben Franklin's brother?
Yeah.
But we were like, eh. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, what if you were Superman's brother, but you were like Randy Quaid, and you could run kind of fast for a guy your age?
Yeah.
And so that's how it started. And then we started just kind of doing this whole thing. So anyway, as it developed, originally I wrote a feature film for it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the worst script I ever wrote. It's really formulaic and really, I hate that script, but it's real, but it had some stuff to it. There were some things in it that were good.
Yeah.
And a mutual friend of ours, George Perez, comic book legend, head of the Teen Titans and everything else, and just one of the most swell guys.
Iconic. And he's a great guy.
Iconic.
Yeah.
He's just a beautiful man. I love George.
Yep.
I had talked to him about it at one of the plays at Moonlight, and I was like, "Hey, George, I got this idea," and he's like, "I think that's great." And we had a meeting about it, and he said, "Why don't you think about doing an animated?" Because I was going to do a live action thing, or I was going to try to pitch it as live action.
Right.
So I was like, okay, all right. I have an issue with this because I can barely write my own name. So like I can't draw Stickman. You know what I mean? Like they're like, why does he have one leg? And I'm like, oh, damn. I'm horrible. So, but I was like, it's a great idea. Let's do that. And so I don't know. I was like, let's try to figure out how to do it and whatever else. And then George was like, why don't you just do like a sizzle reel or a proof of concept or something for it? Then you could pitch it and try to get funding for animations. Animation's more expensive.
Yeah.
And so I asked George, and George agreed to design all of my characters. So he and I met several times,
and I would tell him what I saw in my mind. I'd be like, oh, he's got like yellow and green stripes, and he's like, you know, his wings are like see-through, and I would tell him, you know, he's like the Hulk, but he's got glasses, and his head is small, and he looks baby Huey, and I would tell him all these things, and then like he was George.
You knew right away, yeah.
He would sketch these things out, and I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly, you know, what I would draw if I had any talent whatsoever, you know? So anyway,
so good advice for anyone listening. Just meet a legend and have them work for you for free.
That's it. That's all you got to do. I mean, what's so hard about
really that simple. You too can have a non-working animated TV show. So anyway, I met somebody else, this girl, Tara Cardinal, who's an actress from Orlando who lives out here as well. Yeah. And Tara read it, loved it, and I was like, hey, why don't you read this character? And she's like, sure. So I cast her.
I'm really excited about this project. It was so much fun recording it. And of course, I had the best character. Thank you, Sonny, for writing me the best character.
She's like, hey, I just did a movie with Michael Dorn, and Michael loves George. Do you want me to put a word in for him? Because he'd be great as this character. And I was like, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
So then she introduced me to Michael Dorn.
He's kind of a Professor X kind of character. Like later on, as the series develops, he becomes more of a mentor, and he starts kind of leading them, and he starts like kind of becomes more of a mentor character for them.
There's like what's the name? Xavier on X-Men.
Yeah, Professor X, exactly. Yeah.
So then now I've got her and Michael Dorn, and then George's art. So then what I did is I leveraged it. I took that, and then the guy Dean Cudworth I'd mentioned earlier is one of my best friends. One of the great, like if you IMDb Dean Cudworth, he's been in everything you've ever seen.
Hi, hey, how are you? Good to see you, Dean Cudworth. Mr. Wonder, Marv Clarkson here. As you can see, I'm a little busy. Don't be offended. We all do it. But look, I have to tell you, in all seriousness, we had an amazing time working on Relatively Super, and so excited to see what's going to happen, not just in this episode, the future episodes, and man, I am so honored to be part of this cast and crew. So
just he's like my brother. He's a dear friend of mine, and you know, so I cast Dean in it, and he lived here, and Dean's kids went to school with Jon Heder's kids.
Okay.
And so he was like, he had talked to me multiple times about it. I'm like, hey, why don't you say something to Jon Heder for me? Yeah, you know, and he's like, I don't know, man. And he's like, I don't want to be like that guy. I'm like, well, everyone wants to work.
Right.
And everybody likes a good idea. So why don't you just mention the idea and be like, oh, hey, I know you like comic books, because he's not shy about that.
Right.
You can be like, my friend is creating a series. And so he did, and Jon Heder signed up.
I mean, before he became huge, he was like a scrawny little guy. And just this poor guy just goes from like, okay, now he can beat up but he can't almost have a physical relation. I mean, he's gigantic. Yeah. I mean, he's like a ball of like.
And then we had, and I had called him and left a message. And then I remember I sat and waited for like 45 minutes, and you know, he didn't call me immediately back.
You're like, oh no, he's not gonna do it.
I'm going to Publix, you know. So I like went to Publix and grabbed like a pub sub or something, and which is Ralph's for all you people on the West Coast. So I and I came back, and there's a voicemail, and the voicemail's like, hey, Sonny, it's Jon Heder, and I heard about your thing from Dean, and it sounds really cool. Call me. So I was like, oh my God. So I called him, and he was at a funeral that day. I shit you not. So oh my God, I'm so sorry. Call me back another day. He's like, no, it's okay. He was so great. And I was like, listen, this is the story. This is your character. And he's like, I'd love to do it. And I'm like, oh my God. So I got Jon Heder. Well, then we had a guy, I'll leave him out of this because I don't want to make it weird, but we had this very famous improvisational actor in Hollywood that Dean and I had worked with, and he kept saying he was going to do it, but then wouldn't reply, and then I just never got an answer. And Dean was like, well, just let's go for somebody else. I've got these friends that own a loop group, or that are part of a loop group, which is like a voiceover group or whatever. Sure. And he's like, let me get their agent guy on the phone, and I'll have him call you. So he called me up, and he's like, what are you looking for? I'm like, I'm looking for an African-American actor, strong voice to play this role. And he's like, well, do you know who Gary Anthony Williams is? And I'm like, is that like Uncle Ruckus from the Boondocks? He's like, yeah. I'm like, I love that guy. He's like, I could probably get him to read it. And he's like, do you know who Keegan-Michael Key is? I'm like,
And now Key and Peele wasn't.
Yeah, it's like you got
Right. They weren't big yet. Yeah.
It wasn't big yet. Now the kids had watched it, and I hadn't seen it. I have no idea who. Now I'm not in the slightest way whatsoever unhappy that I got Gary Anthony Williams. Spoiler alert.
Right.
In the slightest way whatsoever, because Gary Williams is amazing. He's so good. It's perfect for the role. But I didn't know
the lesson later. I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I didn't know Keegan Michael Key was, and I didn't know who Jordan Peele was, and we had no idea that Jordan Peele was going to be Jordan Peele.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So he's like, let me get these guys. So anyway, the next day, I'm sitting there, and it's like 10 o'clock in the morning, East Coast time, 7 o'clock LA time, and I get a phone call, and it's an 818 number, and it's like, hi, Sonny, this is Gary Anthony Williams. And I go, fuck off. Who is this? It was like one of my friends screwing with me. He goes, it's Gary Anthony Williams. And I'm like, are you shitting me? I'm like, oh my God, I'm a huge fan. And he's like, because that's Sarah.
Hi, this is Gary Anthony Williams. I'm currently driving an automobile. No, not because I saw Matthew McConaughey driving an automobile. No, I was driving long before Matthew ever imagined driving.
And he's just amazing. And, you know, we talked. I sent him the script, and he came back and said, hey, I think this is really funny. I love the material. I want to do it. And I'm like, all right, you're in.
Cool, man. We did it.
Yeah.
It's already sold.
Half an hour goes by. My phone rings again. It's a 310 area code. I know it's LA. I pick it up. Hey, man, what's up? I'm like, yeah, this is Sonny Chico Films. And he's like, yeah, this is Keegan Michael Key. And I was like, oh, hey. You know, now I'm not as dumb. I'm like, oh, hey, you know, and he's like, hey, my guy Chris had reached out to me about your project, Relatively Super. It sounds really fun. I'd love to read it. And I'm like, oh, man, here's the thing. I already cast Gary Anthony Williams in the part. He goes, fuck Gary Anthony Williams. And I'm like, oh, man. He goes, no, I'm just kidding. He's like, I love Gary. He's like, Gary's the best. He's great. I love it. You know, maybe we could work together on something. And I'm like, oh, my God, I'd love to work. That'd be amazing, right? Yeah. So then, like, you know, half an hour goes by, phone rings again, another 310 area code. I pick it up. It's Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele's like, hey, I read the thing. And I'm like, I already cast it. You tell me you cast Keegan Michael Peele. Thank you. And I go, no, I cast Gary Anthony Williams. He goes, fuck Gary Anthony Williams. But then he goes, no, I'm just kidding. Gary's great. And I'm like, yeah, I actually just talked to Key and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, hey, keep us in mind. You know, and I'm like, absolutely. You know, at the time, I just didn't know who they were. Right. You know, and later on, I would have written something for them. I would have just threw them. I would have taken all of the white characters and made them black.
Exactly. That's incredible. That's incredible.
So I got them, and then the part was I was going to play the quasi lead. But then I was like, I've gotten all these great, talented people to do it. Yeah. I'm nobody. Why don't I try to get somebody better to play my part? So I reached out to Bruce Campbell, and we went back and forth with his agent, and he considered it for a long time, but he eventually passed. This is 6-7 years ago. He was doing Burn Notice, Evil Dead movie and whatever. And so he passed. And then I got Michael Biehn, you know, who's, you know, for our age, you know, Terminator, Aliens, Abyss, The Rock, you know, I mean, the guy's one of the best action actors of all time, and he's just a great actor.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So I got him to do it, and he signed a contract and was going to do it. And Brian Cox was going to play the role opposite of him, and it's kind of like Batman and Alfred if Batman and Alfred were gay together.
Yeah, okay.
And it's not like they're funny and dressed; they're just happen to be homosexuals, you know. And so what ended up happening was, I think Michael Biehn fired his agent or something, because then I was trying to schedule us to record our session, and I could not get a response from his agent. Right. So finally I called, and I'm like, look, I got a contract on this guy. You know, your agent's not calling me back. I live in Florida. It's hard for me to come LA and to record you. Right. And they're like, okay, well, his agent's no longer with the company, and Michael's being represented by, you know, the head of the company now. Let's have him call you back. And so I'm not disparaging the agent at all, but the agent has no idea what this tiny little voiceover contract that we signed. Sure. Right? So, which I'm paying him, you know, way less than what Michael Biehn is worth. But they did agree to it, you know. So he calls me. I'm in a Walgreens, and he's like, so why should Michael do your project? And I'm like, because he signed a contract? I'm like, I've already done the pitching. Yeah, I've already pitched this. And I'm like, why are you making me resell myself? Yeah. So in the end, he was like, listen, Michael Biehn is a SAG actor and only does SAG work, and your project isn't SAG. So you either need to make it SAG or I got to pull Michael from this. And I'm like, but I have a contract.
And he's like, I understand that, and you can fight me if you want, but I don't know why. This is why the agent doesn't work here anymore. You know, basically was that. And so I went, you know what, fuck it. If that's the way you are, I don't want to work with you.
Right. Exactly.
Now, in hindsight, thinking now, we ended up making the project SAG anyway, because after Michael Biehn dropped out, I cast myself in it again, and I recorded the voiceover stuff. And then I was like, oh man, I wish I could get somebody else. I went back to Bruce Campbell's guys, and I'm like, hey, listen, I got Gary Williams in this. I got Michael Dorn in this. I got Jon Heder in this. He doesn't have to carry it. He's just another voice.
Right.
And he's like, let me reach out to him again. And so he reached out again. He turned me down again. But he's like, hey, I represent a lot of voice actors. And, you know, he goes, do you know who Judd Nelson is? And I'm like,
oh, yeah.
I'm, you know, at the time, I'm like, I'm 40. You know, I grew up with the Breakfast Club.
Yeah,
I'm like,
exactly.
You know, and he's like, well, how about C. Thomas Howell? And I'm like, yeah, duh. I saw Soul Man. I feel bad about it. You know, it's C. Thomas Howell, you know, but I'm like, but yeah. So he's like, then he goes, or you know what would be great for this? He goes, do you know who Kevin Conroy is? I'm like, Batman. And he's like, yeah. And I go, that reach out to him already.
Kevin Conroy, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, it's Batman, and the character is Batman, basically. It's a, you know, an amalgamation of this character. DC,
voice.
don't sue me.
Yeah.
But the character is basically, you know, a runoff of Batman.
Hey, this is Kevin Conroy from the Batcave. He's calling himself Blackout now. I mean, come on.
You know, I sent DC and Marvel Comics this idea first, and they were super gracious, and they sent me a very nice cease and desist letter.
Really? Seriously?
Yeah, for sure. Wow. They really did. They both sent me you're not allowed to use our characters in any way whatsoever. Because originally we wanted this to be as part of that universe.
Right.
But like Roger Rabbit. Remember how Roger Rabbit had like Bugs Bunny and also Disney characters in it?
Exactly.
I wanted to
right.
like that with DCN. Anyway, so they both declined, and Kevin's in. I'm like, I definitely reached out to Kevin before, and they turned it down. So I go and look through my emails, and I find out, I'm like, I reached out to this Teresa lady. Goes, oh, Teresa is his live action agent. So that's why she's not going to have him do a movie for X amount of dollars.
Yeah.
But for voiceover, it's a totally different rate. Let me reach out to him.
Yeah.
So he reaches out to Kevin Conroy. Kevin and I talk on the phone. Kevin says, I love the script. I want to do it. And the next day, or that night when Kevin signs on, my wife is like, I don't know who Kevin Conroy is. I'm like, he's the voice of Batman from Batman, the animated series, and all the video games and stuff. I'm like, you know, he's the quintessential Batman. And so I show her this video from Comic-Con, and it's him and Mark Hamill on a panel. And so 100% correct, you know, props to my wife. She goes, you should get Mark Hamill to play because Brian Cox dropped out too. Yeah. So she's like, get Mark Hamill to play the Brian Cox character. And I go, okay, yeah, I'm going to get Mark Hamill in my little animated series. Okay, Sharon. You know, I'm like, yeah. She goes, well, how did you get everybody else? And this is the lesson. She's like, how did you get everybody else? And I said, I asked.
Yeah. And
she's like, just ask. Well, I ended up researching in Mark's agent, or it was, I don't know if it still is, but it's Natanya Rose from ICM, and that's Gary Williams' agent too, International Creative Management. Yeah. And she's great. She was awesome, and she was great getting Gary. And when Gary signed on to do this, I didn't negotiate with her. She was awesome. And then when I reached out about Mark, she's like, I don't know, you know, like it's great that you got Gary, and you know, you're nobody, and it's amazing you've gotten all these people. I don't know how you did it.
Now you're pushing your luck.
Yeah, she's like, Mark might be a taller order, you know. She's not rude about it, but very like, you know. Yeah. And she goes, I'll tell you this right now, Mark won't even consider it if you're not SAG. She's like, he won't even look at it. So I was like, all right. So then I went and I got a SAG contract, and we did it under SAG. So anyway, I know Kevin Conroy is friends, so I was like, yeah, we reached out to Mark Hamill, your buddy, and we tried to get him to do it, and he's like, oh, to play Albert? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, oh my God, so Mark and I would be lovers? I'm like, yeah. He goes, we have to make that happen. I'm like, well, you can help. You know, so I think Kevin called him and greased the wheels for us.
Right.
And we ended up recording Kevin Conroy at Avatar Studios, the
I've been there. Absolutely. Yep.
Brilliant, incredible place.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I reached out to Mark, and Mark said he was, you know, they waited and waited. And then finally, I got an email. We were going to see a play actually at Moonlight, and Tom's play was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, okay.
And we were at that little wine bar, and I get an email, and it says the you know, topic of the email just literally said Mark is in, and I went, no way. And I looked at it.
Yeah, you had to look at it again.
And you know, we were like, I was crying. I was like, I can't believe, you know, I mean, I'm 47 years old. You know, I mean, I saw Star Wars 1,000 times before I was 10. You know what I mean? Like, I love Mark Hamill.
he was incredible to work with.
Yeah.
Like he was, you'll see in some of these clips.
Taking this job, he and Wade went to college together and were
But
friends.
he's sort of an ex-tough guy then.
He is, yeah.
So that's
a little more gruff.
Yeah. All right, well, let's just get I'll give you several variations and we'll see what you like.
Awesome.
Speak of the devil. I'll let him in. Remember, you were young once too. He's your brother. Be patient. Now, I'm not sensitive. If you hear it in your head a certain way and want to give me a line reading, it doesn't bother me. I call myself the anti-Shatner.
But he was, he didn't have a huge part, you know, but we booked an hour and we were at a studio in Santa Monica, and he just couldn't have been nicer, couldn't have been more giving as an actor. I want you to be happy, and whatever you want is what I want to give you. It was so incredible. And so I literally was like, okay, it's this. And he's like, oh, I got it. So you're, oh. And then he did it, and I'm just like, oh my God. And it was just, I you know, they say don't meet your heroes. I say bullshit, because he was incredible. He couldn't have been more accommodating and nice. And all of them, Michael Dorn was great. I mean, I don't want to like act like I'm blowing smoke up their asses. This is 6 years ago, and Relatively Super is in development hell right now. We're struggling to try to get it off the ground, which is why we.
But the same tenets of how you attacked producing that are things that have helped us in this too, which is like, if there's any advice to give, if we're in any place to give advice, which I don't know if we are, but
of course you are, absolutely.
Get an IMDb Pro account and just ask.
Yeah.
Because these people want to make stuff that's good.
Yeah.
They want new material. You know, I can't even imagine being an actor that's being presented something that's like, we wrote this for you.
Right.
And that has been our experience over, you know, 2 projects, being like, hey, Eric, we wrote this for you. We love you.
Yeah.
And it's an instant yes.
I got called within an hour. I mean, it took like a couple of weeks with Mark Hamill, but we're not talking about, like, I'm not going to get into the financial part of it. But it wasn't a huge offer. And you know what I mean? It was that he connected with the material.
Yeah.
And it was for an hour of his time.
Right.
And he, you know, he loves obviously you know, when we're talking about the promise of the series, not for the pilot, you know what I mean? The pilot hasn't quite gotten off the ground because you know, apparently an animated series needs animation. These guys are like, we'd love to see art.
Or you could do like the South Park, you know, version of animation. You know, the old South Park.
On the docket.
That's on the docket, yeah, or at least their marketing strategy.
Hey, you know,
But
honestly, think about it. Think about how big it is. You know, South Park has been and still continues to be. And
Incredible.
I mean, that kind of you know, animation I think is great. You know, it's really about the story. You know, the whole point here is it doesn't have to look the sexiest. It doesn't have to be a blockbuster looking. You know, it's like anything else, like even a movie. Like a film, you know, if you have a good story, people are going to listen to it and people are going to watch it. That's the way I feel. Sonny Jr., I want to ask you about, you know, now that you're out of film school and you're doing, you know, films in Hollywood, you know, during school, I don't know how this was taught or, you know, the history of the film itself or going to digital, because I know the medium has really kind of changed over to digital, even on a big scale, I think. So talk about that transition from film.
Ongoing debate between us.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But I wanted to talk to you because do they teach that in school, the transition and going to digital, and how is that like looked upon in the film industry?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I kind of straddled the 2 eras. So my class was the last, like when I went freshman year, I was taught on 16 millimeter.
Okay.
We did 4 projects. They gave us film and we shot on film, and that was all I learned on. So I went to community college and then transferred to Columbia. I wasn't a very good student. You know, I would blow class and just go watch movies.
He went to community college when he was in high school.
Yeah.
He had his,
he had
his master's degree before he graduated high school.
There you go.
Right.
Proud dad.
That's good.
Still, you know, I got lucky when I did, because we did still learn on film. And I mean, in Guts, we most recently shot a proof of concept, and a large segment of that is shot on 16 millimeter.
We shot on both mediums.
Yeah, I would not be able to do that without what I learned there.
What did we shoot on Red Gemini and then on 16?
It was like an F-22. What is?
Oh, no, it was a Sony.
Yeah, Sony, and then the RE SR3.
Right.
But to answer your question, I hope they don't get mad at me for this. But when I was there, the idea was we are doomed. Nothing's ever going to be made on film again. Learn it while you can. This is a lost art form. Treasure the information you learn here because you're fucked. And it sounds a little gloomy, but that was kind of what they told us about. They're like, there will be no movies made on film by the time you're out of school. And I'm happy to report that that's not true.
The reports of my demise are greatly exaggerated.
Yeah, exactly.
But let me ask
Go ahead.
this. Let me ask this because, with that being said, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, because I always shot in digital, but isn't it a lot less expensive for your project to shoot in digital where you can, because film processing itself is half of most people's budget when it comes to processing and dailies and just the film that's wasted during the film.
It's a quantity thing, though.
Right.
So, like, if you're shooting a short like us, so the short that we just did, there's a segment in it that's like a flashback or a dream sequence, and we want to do an aspect ratio change, and we wanted to do a medium change. So basically, we shot the rest of the stuff in standard what 137.
Well, we shot the rest of the movies on 185, or 16:9 with full crop to 185, and then we shot on Super 16, which natively comes out to 166,
right?
Which we cropped to 133.
So it's slightly square.
Sure. Yeah, this is where your viewers tune out.
Yeah, but so basically, for those of you listening at home not watching, it basically means the difference between a widescreen format means you have color, or you have the bars on the bottom, the black bars on the bottom. In a 4:3 image or a square image like 133, you have bars on the sides, which they're a lot of times referred to as pillars.
Yeah.
So we had pillar bars on our thing, but it was a choice to do a format change because this is a dream sequence and we wanted it to be that way.
Well, also, the native format of 16mm film is different from digital.
Sure.
And so any of those differences between, the difference in color, the dynamic range, the frame size, all of those things were like, let's just lean into that rather than trying to blend it.
From a cost standpoint, though, for us, the film portion of it, which was basically 1/3 or 1/4 of the finished project that we were doing, probably cost more than the other parts of the project. Just the camera rental and the film and the film processing stuff.
But that's hard because
this is
my answer.
We shot more stuff. It would have almost equaled out.
Yeah, my answer to the question is it's a question of scale. So when you are on a feature film, the difference between digital and film is completely negligible. If you are starting out, which I'm sad to say because I don't want this to be true, but it's going to be cheaper to shoot your film on digital than it is on 16mm.
Exactly.
That fucking sucks, but it's true.
But if you have the money for a feature you're literally talking about thousands of dollars, not hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. It's it costs like $900 or something to do 16 minutes of footage, something like that.
Something like
it's less than $1,000 to do like 16 minutes of footage processing. And we went to Photochem LA, which, by the way, oh my God, incredible.
Best in the business.
Legendary and everything else. But they ask you every question. They're asking you what your temperature was. You have to do a whole report on each reel.
Yeah.
Which you don't do for digital because digital is so forgiving.
That's the thing. Digital is, and this is where I think your question of cost comes back in too, is it may be cheaper to take a fucking Canon 5D or something and shoot a 15-minute movie. Then you gotta, color it and do all that stuff to make it look good. Film just looks good.
Yeah.
If you get the exposure right, if you focus, it just looks
Even
good.
the flat stuff that we shot that hasn't been colored at all, it just looks incredible. It just looks so richer, and it really, and he and I, there's a great documentary called Side by Side, which Keanu Reeves is the narrator for. It's incredible. And he and I had this conversation before because as an independent filmmaker, I'm like, I can't afford to shoot on film.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can't do a 20-minute short and I'm paying half my budget to film and film processing. But he is, a traditionalist and, loves older movies and everything else, which is funny because, my kid, you think I'd be the other way, but, he's very traditionalist in that aspect. And we've had these debates and fights about it over and over again. And this is one of the reasons why we did this for this project, is because I wanted to see his side of it.
Right.
You know, because I was certain of my side of it. I've already shot on digital, and I've done
Right.
multiple shoots in multiple projects.
Well,
but
we
I've
got
never shot
lucky
on
too,
film.
because I had been working on something
yeah.
else, which I won't, whatever. It never panned quite out, but I had bought about 1,200 feet of film, which is like, you know, maybe 30 minutes.
Right. Right.
And it's sitting in my fridge for a year, just
Yeah.
sitting back.
Yeah, right.
And so we started talking about this idea. Dad's like, yeah, I had this dream that, you know, it's like Fortuna Undercover. It's this flashback sequence, 70s cop shows. I'm like, dude, I got the film in my fridge. I already paid for it. Let's fucking go.
Let's shoot it on 16 millimeter.
Yeah, let's get the camera.
So we rented a separate. So what we basically did for our shoot is that Friday, we had a weekend, right? And we're like, that Friday, we're going to rent this car. There's this car that Preston Fortuna, my character, drives. Like, he's this old school detective, like, trapped out of time, right? I mean, not really legitimately, but you could see him falling into the bogey.
It's the Rip Van Marlowe thing, you know?
Right.
Philip Marlowe gets encased in ice for 100 years and wakes up, and he's in California in 2020. And he's like, or 2020. And he's like, what the fuck is happening?
I channeled my Elliot Gould, you know, from the Long Goodbye. And, you know, like, it definitely is homage, you know, of the great noir-y detective things, but there's a lot more humor in it, like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, or, you know, something Shane Black would have written.
Right.
But so we wanted to do this straight narrative piece, which we wrote together, that's about this detective on a job, and it's basically he's catching these people having an affair. You know, like what most detectives, that's their job. You catch some chick beating on her old man, and you show them pictures, and you get paid, and it's gross and disgusting. And that's your job, you know. And so we wanted to do that, so we wrote this narrative piece that's that. And then at one point he gets punched out, and it goes to dark, and then when he comes up, there's this thing. And so, you know, without giving too much of it away, but I was like, I thought about this thing. What if when Preston gets knocked out, he has this dream of being in a TV show? You know, I'm like, the dream is like, you know, because he's a detective and he wishes he wasn't this scummy detective.
Well, doesn't everybody? I mean, you watch Magnum PI and you think, oh, if you're a private investigator, your job is blowing up drug cartels in Hawaii. Not like, oh, I'm catching some chick fucking her trainer. You know?
Yeah.
It's just kept running Ferrari. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're like, that's it. You know, I'm teaching swim lessons.
But I wanted to thank you. What inspires me about you, Sonny, is that your family is amazing, and you all work together so seamlessly, and you can't really, you know, buy that. You know, these days it's so many, you know, kids go off to college or they go start families or whatever, but you guys just have a nice tight-knit family, and you guys are able to work together. I think there's nothing better in the world to see, you know, than a family that sticks together and works together so well. And you guys are chasing your dreams that are all the same, and you can't really beat that. So kudos to you for raising such a great family, you and Sharon.
2,000 years of that.
Yeah, well, and I would offer the same to you, because I've seen the same thing with you and Jess and with Eric as well. I saw Eric was doing some photography or something, and I was like, you know, I love that kid. You know, I mean, he was. I directed him Damn Yankees, him and Jess, and he was, you know, they both were incredible. But Eric, I just loved him, and he was. I remember when I was the assistant director for Willy Wonka, and he was incredible in that as well. He's just a good kid. But here's what I think, and I think you get this as well. And I know when we worked together on the Ann Nesby video and on Jingy as well, I find that if you're doing this and you're not working with people you like to work with, and people that, like, I mean, obviously their talent has to be there. They have to be good enough to do the parts. You know, you don't give parts to anybody. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You know, it's not UNICEF. You know, but like, if you work with people that are talented and dedicated and passionate, and especially if you like being around them, the work is not work. It's easy.
Yeah.
You like, you know, we busted our ass for 15 hours a day or 16 hours a day for 4 days. And when it was done, the first thing I could think of is, God damn it, I wish I was back doing it.
I know. You get that kind
all I wanted to do was get back to shooting and busting my ass for 16 hours a day.
I hear you. I hear you.
So much.
There's
you know?
a serious depression that creeps in when it's all over.
Well,
I mean, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I've got a point where my son and both my sons, Alex is a great actor, and we put it, you know, I try to work with him as much as I can, but he's doing other shit too.
That was the other, we didn't talk about this at all. Before this, I had directed Alex in 2 other shorts as like the lead. I mean, Alex is fucking dynamite.
Yeah, he's incredible. And it's like, for us, you had mentioned earlier about the directing thing. You know, we were concerned of it.
What's that?
Concerned about it. Like I was definitely
working together.
Yeah, working together, how it worked, and if we were going to be like, I'm big, I'm a lot, you know what I mean? Like, and this is my kid, and at some point, is he going to be like, you know, oh, shit, my dad's fucking up. You know, I don't know how to say this to him, and you know, we had to have a conversation about it where I was like, no, you're the director, I'm just an actor. Treat me like every other actor. So for him to be like, you know, less Sonny Dyon, you know, bring it down, was the great note, and that's all I needed. And we did the same thing with Alex when we directed stuff with Alex, and I've directed Alex. Actually, Alex was in Damn Yankees and Willy Wonka as well, you know, with your kids. You know, but when I directed Alex, I just treated him like any other actor. I didn't hold him to a higher standard or a lower standard, just the standard I hold any actor to. Give me your best. That's it. That's all I asked for. And he directed Alex and brought out some, you know, Alex is something, he's somebody that just, he's already thought of 15 different ways to say the line.
I'll say this about Alex. Working with Alex is like having the keys to a really nice car. It just, you know, it's gonna work.
You know, it's gonna run well, right?
Wherever you want with it. He is just incredible. And the same thing with you. You know, if you can get past the awkwardness of maybe working with family, you have a leg up already. It's like, I've already had the worst fight I'm ever going to have in my life with my dad, you know, 10 years ago or something. Like, you know, like, we're just making a movie now. At least I don't have to dance around any bullshit working with him or working with Alex.
Right.
You know.
We know that our goal is the same. You know what I mean? And the same thing, like, you know, with you know, as a father working with my sons.
Yeah.
And, you know, one directing me and me directing the other, or vice versa, or whatever else. The goal is to just, on set, is a professional atmosphere that we're all out for. Now, we're not very stodgy, but we are very much structured. So like our set is a professional set. It's not, you know, nimbly. We take lunch when we take lunch, and we, you know, and when we're shooting, we're shooting. It's not fucking around time. It's time to shoot. You know, so I don't have any problem yelling at somebody if I have to, but I'd prefer not to. You know what I mean? I prefer to just be like, hey, let's do this and let's have fun doing it, because we're making movies.
Exactly.
It's incredible.
We're definitely, I think, I mean, you would say this too, but I think we're like an actor-centric set. Like, we love actors. Obviously, you're acting in this. I love actors.
Yeah. You were an actor
the best
in your past as well.
It's the best part of doing this is, you know, when you're getting into movies, the first time you see something huge, you're 7 years old, you go, oh man, Vittorio Storaro really shot the shit out of that one. It never happened.
Oh, Manny Lubeski.
Yeah, exactly. You go, oh, I love Tom Cruise. You know, like that's the guy that's on the screen.
Yeah.
And some people lose that when they make movies, and then some people don't.
Yeah, no one watched Jaws, and unfortunately for Ron Vidor, no one watched Jaws and said, God damn, that underwater footage that made the movie. Richard Dreyfuss and the USS Indian scene, you know, like that's all you think about.
And the mechanical fish never worked.
The cinematography is fucking amazing, but just, it's funny that when you get more into filmmaking, a lot of people tend to kind of forget about the actor for some reason.
Right.
When that's kind of the thing that got us all in the game.
It's about the aesthetics and more than it is the actual content itself, or
you know, it's all about balance. I mean, you know, like the stuff that we worked on together.
Gotta be balance. Yeah, for sure. Well, guys, I can't thank you enough. Again, you know, I'm inspired by you guys, and I love seeing, you know, all your social media posts, and you know, you are inspiring as a family. So, you know, I want to thank you, and please say hello to Sharon and Alex for me, and you guys, you know, take care out there in LA during this pandemic, and you know, I can't wait to push your project, your Guts project, when it comes out, and you know, I hope you give me an interview during that time, and we'll. You know,
once we're really huge, we'll do it again. Say hi to Eric and Jess for me, and Griselda too.
I will. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, guys. Have a great night.
Thanks,
All right.
Dave.